The Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast is brought to you by the following sponsors: EliteForm.com, IgnitionAPG.com, PlayUSA at PLAEUSA.com, and Sorinex Exercise Equipment at Sorinex.com. And now, the Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast. Welcome to Iron Game Chalk Talk with your host, Ron McKeefery.
Every time our athletes walk into this weight room, they're going to be pushed to the max.
Let's go! Everything you got!
On this podcast, hear Coach McKeefery straight talk about training, featuring the top strength and conditioning professionals from around the world. And now, here's your host, Ron McKeefery.
Hey guys, welcome back to Iron Game Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and this is episode number 131. Really want to take a moment and just wish everybody, especially in the United States, a very happy Thanksgiving. I hope that you have a great week, a great day with your family, and whether or not you're in the United States or not, I mean, any opportunity to take a moment and just be thankful for all the things that we have, living a life of abundance as opposed to a life of scarcity. We have so much to be thankful for, each and every one of us. And I'm thankful to you for listening to this podcast. I'm thankful to my family for allowing me to do what I love to do. I'm thankful for our athletes, our coaches. The sponsors of this show, allow me to do this. There's just so much to be thankful for all of us. And most importantly, the opportunity to make an impact in young people's lives and using a vessel in athletics to do so, what we all love, you couldn't ask for more. And so happy Thanksgiving. Be safe. Hopefully you're traveling. Hopefully you downloaded several Iron Game Chalk Talk episodes to get you through your travels. But just like I said, I just wish you the best day, through the best day. So I want to get to this episode. Excited to have Johnny Larson with us. Johnny is the head strength coach at Manhattan College. He's a young guy. He's been with Army. He's been with Alabama. He's worked for the Cardinals. He's got his first opportunity here as the head strength coach at Manhattan College up in New York. And, it's a great opportunity to talk to somebody that's just taken over a program. They did not have a strength conditioning coach prior to him. So he's creating a department and creating a culture and all the unique challenges that kind of come with doing that. And so I wanted to have him on the show to talk about those things, to dig in them a little bit. And I know that we can all kind of pull from his experiences, especially if you've not had the opportunity to lead a program. I think there's some gems in this episode. So before we do, I want to make sure we recognize all of our sponsors: PlayUSA, EliteForm, Sorinex, and of course Ignition APG. And you guys all know, like I said in the intro, I'm so thankful for all of our sponsors because they allow this to happen. To be able to bring this show to you for free each week. But more importantly, I'm thankful for just the type of people they are. And Ignition, highest character. I mean, mind, body, and spirit is what they're all about. Constantly doing things, church on the street, using faith through their, through their platform of performance, and always doing some awesome things, and have great people within their organization and great people that they bring in to train, and so I would encourage you to go to their Facebook page, follow them. There's always some inspiration as they go through, but a couple things I want to highlight with them. First, if you're a young coach, you want to talk about a company that's doing some cool things. I mean, they got stuff going on overseas, with tennis, and they're working in China right now. They have their combine prep where they bring in several athletes each year. They got some really cool partnerships in the Cincinnati area. If you're looking for an internship, they've got a great program, and I would highly encourage you to reach out to them. Just send an email to customer.service at ignitionapg.com and send that out to those guys. But I would think that it is a phenomenal experience and being able to see a lot of unique things there. Second thing is they have a speed certification that I highly recommend. I did it a couple years back and definitely took away some great programming, some ideas for the program, but just a nice credential to be able to throw out there, to our athletes, to our coaches, to our administrators, and just saying that, hey, it's not just, your education, your degree, but you've gone on and gotten advanced training in an area and one that's such a speed that's so important. And so I'd highly encourage you to look into, just go to their website, ignitionapg.com, check out their speed certification. They do one, in the Cincinnati area each year, but they also do on-site ones, and so you can reach out to them about that. But I want to get to this episode. I know you're going to get a ton out of it. Sit back and enjoy it, and we'll see you on the other side. Hey guys, got Johnny Larson with us. Johnny is a guy that I've kept an eye on through the years here. He's a guy that we've connected on social media. I've kind of followed his path. He's the head strength coach for Manhattan College, the first strength coach there, and doing some great things. I wanted to bring him on the show. We wanted to get kind of into, just that process. I mean, being, he's, mid-20s, head strength coach, gets big opportunity to kind of lead a program, and that's something that, when we're talking off camera, we both agree on that. You don't really understand what it means to be a strength coach until you've kind of been thrown into that role where you have to deal with coaches and you have to deal with administration, you have to deal with resources and things like that. But man, I appreciate you coming on the show. What kind of filling some gaps there? Kind of your journey, where you've been, Reader's Digest version, and we'll jump right into this thing, man.
Yes, sir. Well, first off, thank you for the opportunity and the privilege of being on the Iron Game Chalk Talk. I truly appreciate your time. Basically, my background, I went to a military academy, Valley Forge Military Academy, for 6 years, 4 years of high school, 2 years in a military junior college. The high school and the junior college are connected under the same regiment. From there, I transferred to Hofstra University. I finished up my first bachelor's in international relations and foreign policy, my second bachelor's exercise science. During my time at Hofstra, I interned with a guy named Mark Chasnov, a physical therapist and former strength and conditioning coach, Olympic weightlifting coach up in Westchester County, New York. He's a USAW Level 5 senior international coach. I also got the opportunity to intern with Robert Panarillo. He was the first ever strength and conditioning coach at St. John's. He now operates and runs his own facility in Garden City in Long Island. From there, I went and worked under two of your former interns, correct me if I'm wrong, both Kyle Farrell and Michelle Carone at West Point. Yep. I got to work under their program for about a year. From that position, I went and I had the opportunity to go to the University of Alabama, where I was working on my master's degree and helping out in the weight room with Coach Scott Cochran, Coach Terry Jones, Coach Michelle Diltz. Had a fantastic opportunity there. I got to assist with tight ends and linebackers, Alabama football. I worked with Alabama softball and wrote the programs for cheerleading. And then from that time, I was actually interviewed and given an opportunity by somebody who had just previously interviewed on your show, Rachel Balkovec.
Yeah.
So I worked for Rachel this past season with the St. Louis Cardinals. I was the strength coach for the High A affiliate Palm Beach Cardinals down in West Palm Beach, Florida. And from that time, as the season came to an end, obviously, as you may or may not know, minor league seasons are shorter than the big leagues. So as soon as the season started coming to an end, the job posting came open for Manhattan College. I am originally from the Bronx. Manhattan College is in the Bronx as well, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to take my experiences from professional baseball and the SEC-style culture and bring that back to a smaller Division I program in my home city. So that's awesome, where I'm at right now at Manhattan College.
Well, congratulations on that. I mean, not very often in this crazy profession do we get an opportunity to coach at home.
Absolutely.
And so
absolutely,
I would encourage anybody that's ever in those shoes to take that and go. But more importantly, what's great about it is it's the next evolution. I mean, you've been a GA, you've been an assistant. This is the next evolution in the process, and I often talk about on the show that and I talk with my staff quite a bit, that you really don't know what it means to be a strength coach, at least the profession of being a strength and conditioning coach, until you've been a head strength coach, until you've had to manage people, until you're the last word on discipline issues, until you're the last word on scheduling and those types of things. I mean, you can always kind of pawn that off as an assistant or a GA or whatever.
Right.
When you get the opportunity to kind of lead it, that's when you really see a lot of growth. And I was fortunate to have that opportunity pretty young. You're fortunate to have that opportunity pretty young. But with that kind of goes with what we were talking off camera was, you don't really know what you don't know until you go into it. You don't really know how you're going to handle a booster meeting or something along those lines until you're actually in those shoes. And so when you showed up, and to be clear with everybody, I mean, at Manhattan College, you're a one-man band. I mean, you're it.
Yes, sir.
So when you showed up, I imagine you walked into the kind of the wild, wild west. I mean, it was kind of run however it was ran. What were some of the biggest issues that you faced when you first walked in the door?
Some of the biggest issues that I found is that I was told beforehand that what we currently have in place in what was once a weight room that was provided to both athletes and non-athletes. So you walk into Eastern Michigan, and I would assume, obviously, that you have a designated varsity weight room that is for NCAA athletes only.
Right.
Well, their version of that was open to the student body,
right.
The entire student body. So one of the first issues was making sure that the student body understood that this was now a designated varsity weight room, and that if you weren't a part of college athletics and you weren't a part of a varsity team, both male and or female, this was no longer a facility that you could utilize at your disposal rather. We just built a new facility across campus, Kelly Commons, which is their recreation center, and that's open all hours throughout the morning, throughout the afternoon, throughout the evening.
Right.
So they have an opportunity to go across the street and utilize that. So that was the first thing, was kind of making sure that not only did I have to communicate that to the student athletes, I had to communicate that to the entire campus, both the academic side and athletic side. The next thing was kind of developing a schedule. When I first got here, school had already been underway. Teams were practicing. Teams were having their meetings. And up until I got there, teams were training in the weight room. Coaches would either contact former athletic trainers, former strength coaches that they used to work with, and they would print out these, blanket generic strength and conditioning programs,
right.
Give a copy of a printout to the athletes and say, go. No prerequisites, no progressions to whether they were doing Olympic lifts, squats, and a lot of them were doing bodybuilding programs. Right. 3 sets of 10, 4 sets of 10 on a lot of isolated exercises. And so I had to kind of come in and sit down with all the coaches and kind of explain to them the way in which I envisioned the schedule working for the entirety of the fall semester based on teams that were in the off season, teams that were in season already, like men's, women's soccer, and volleyball. And then your teams that were preseason, like women's basketball and men's basketball. So after I had the meetings, I had to kind of sit down with the other assistant athletic directors and kind of go over a schedule and establish a time slot throughout the day for, okay, women's basketball is coming in from 4 to 5 o'clock. Women's softball is coming in from 6 a.m. to 6:50. Men's baseball is coming in from 7 to 8:30. We're going to have 2 different groups of, 15 players in each group. Position players and then pitchers. So, this is all foreign to them. This is all foreign to them because they've never had this before. So getting the coaches together, getting the athletes together, getting everybody to buy in and really help propel this idea forward that this was now going to be a scheduled-based weight room where you had designated hours and designated times throughout the week to utilize. There was no longer a free-for-all.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit because that's something that I think is a common question is scheduling.
Right.
So how many total sports do you have there?
We have 19 total sports. When I first got here, however, I had a meeting with the teams that were in season. So men's soccer, women's soccer, and volleyball, I actually have not started to train yet. They were already in the heart of their season. They were approaching conference tournaments. I didn't want to interfere and interrupt and add a new extra stressor to their everyday schedule while they're in the middle of the season. So I thought it was a better idea, a better approach to kind of just wait until their season ends. We'll take a step back. I'll meet with the coaches. We'll talk about some of the things that they want to work on. And then once they get into that off-season period, we'll start from there.
So you got 19 sports. Not working with all of them quite just yet, but
Right.
but you're having to kind of plan for that. And I'm assuming out of the 19 sports, I don't think you guys have football, correct?
No, sir. No, we don't.
So, when it comes to revenue producing sports, there's maybe 2-3 sports, out of those 19 that are revenue producing.
Exactly.
So when you sat down with those assistant athletic directors and you sat down with those coaches, and you're going from meeting to meeting, how did you go about, and maybe what was your administration's view on kind of a hierarchy of scheduling? I mean, if everybody wants 6 a.m., who gets it? If everybody, if it's a team like baseball, like you mentioned, why do they get pitchers and position players, or how are you able to break that up from a priority standpoint?
I was in an extremely fortunate position when scheduling came about when I first got here to Manhattan College, where the assistant athletic directors and the athletic director himself, they professionally and respectfully took almost somewhat of a hands-off approach with respect to how I chose to schedule the teams, and then just reassured me that whatever you say and however you develop that schedule, we're going to have your back. With respect to talking and sorting out the coaches and getting them to buy in and kind of comply with the schedule. So what I did was, when it came to scheduling in terms of the hierarchy and which teams may or may not have priority, obviously teams that are in season or teams that are preseason, where the volume of the sport and the competitive play is going up, the volume of which they need to come into the weight room is going to be down. So from that standpoint, I said teams that are currently in the off season right now, in my mind, should have first priority coming into the weight room. Because if I have teams that are in preseason, like women's basketball and men's basketball, they're not going to be doing a whole lot of volume. They're not going to be doing anything over the top in terms of programming and exercise selection. And more often than not, I find myself focusing on, band stretching, foam rolling, doing soft tissue with them when they get out of practice at the end of the night. They have very, very long days, practice in the morning, class all day long. Because we have one court in one indoor facility, there's a lot of teams that need to go in there to use it. We have cages that drop down, track and field is out there, baseball's out there, volleyball's out there. So their schedule's limited. So I find that sometimes I'm not even seeing them until 5:30, 5:45 at night, and they're in season. Right. So basically I took the approach when I started to schedule the teams for the fall semester that off-season teams would have the priority. And then based on my experience having experience working at Alabama, West Point, Hofstra, and so forth, I said this is typically how these teams in the off-season schedule their times. Most of the programs that I've been to, your softball and your baseball were first thing in the morning in the fall semester. It's their off-season time. The volume of the weight room is high. They're going either 3 or 4 day splits. So typically you would find that those teams are coming in very first thing in the morning.
Right.
And fortunately, as you said, I don't have a football team to worry about. So having football in a sport like that, I don't really have to be overly concerned with making sure that the weight room can be accommodated to some of those smaller, non-revenue generating Olympic sports.
Right.
And then I just went from there. And again, a lot of these coaches never had this experience before. They never had a strength coach full-time on staff. So again, I've been in a fortunate position where these coaches have just said, you know what, he might be 26 years old, but the places he's been in, the places that he's experienced, we're just going to take his word for it, and we're going to comply, and we're going to roll with it. And a lot of strength coaches aren't fortunate enough to be in that position. So I've been blessed to be in this spot, because not only do I get to do this job and develop a culture literally from scratch, but I've received a tremendous amount of backing and support from the athletic administration as well as the coaches.
Yeah, I think sometimes that's when you're given the opportunities to kind of go about your own way, it's both positive and negative sometimes. A positive in that this is support, but it's also kind of putting you out on the ledge a little bit to say, is he going to mess up or not?
Right.
And you've been in some opportunities and some places that you got great resources to be able to call Michelle and say, hey, how did you set this up? Or call Kyle, who's the head strength coach now, or Scott, or whoever else, and run those things by. And I think that's we were talking again a little bit off camera, and that I think it's important that you go through the process. It's important to go through the process of being an intern and being a GA and then being an assistant and getting that opportunity because you see it from different perspectives
Right.
when you go. I think with just scheduling, what we've done is we've taken a revenue producing and non-revenue hierarchy to some degree. I agree with you. Off season becomes a priority because in the off season, that's the time that we make the biggest impact on a team, and that's when we're trying to add and replace the team culture that's created during the season. And so team scheduling becomes a priority in the off season for the off season sports. Then it becomes team in season, and then it's grouped from there.
Right.
Based off of class schedules typically.
Right.
And so we kind of have an open gym during class time, but it's scheduled, and so, one of the things that I think you walked into, again, is a culture in which maybe they didn't always show up on time, and maybe they didn't always, it was kind of like just do your own thing, and maybe it wasn't that you had to wear the same stuff and things along those lines. What were some of the cultural things that you walked into that you're like, oh no, that's not going to happen, and here's how we're going to change that?
As we discussed before, up until the point of which I was hired, there was no schedule. There was no accountability in their weight room. So student athletes were just walking into the weight room, and if they decided to go down there and do some power cleans, they'd throw some plates on the floor, leave the chalk all over the floor, leave the bar and the plates on the floor, and then just walk away when they had to go to night class.
Right.
They weren't coming in as a team. They weren't taking care of the equipment. And I said, now that we have a fully functioning, regimented strength conditioning program here, it needs to operate as such. The teams are going to come in collectively as a group. They're going to hold each other accountable with respect to the way in which they treat the weight room. How are we dressing? How are we acting? Are we going to be compliant with the head strength coach? Are we going to be compliant with whatever interns or GAs he might have in the future? And my biggest thing is taking pride in it. It's a Division I weight room. You have a strength and conditioning program now, a formalized strength and conditioning program now. You need to take pride in what it is, because beforehand you didn't have this. And basically, I want to come in here and I want to create a new level of energy down there in that weight room at the bottom of Alumni Hall. I think that's one of the most important things with developing any strength and conditioning program, whether you're walking into a program that's existed for 20 to 30 years or whether you're walking into a program that's only existed for 2 months like myself. I think understanding corrective exercise and bioenergetics and things like that with respect to training individual sports, I think all those things are important, but I think one of the biggest things that's often neglected is the energy and the psychological carryover and team chemistry and the cultural bonding that you're getting from that experience.
Right.
And right now in the developmental stages, that more than anything else is my priority.
Sure.
Developing a culture down there where the teams can work together, they can fight together, they can battle together, they get after it together, they get better together. And I think that has the biggest carryover to the field, if not more than anything else.
Sure. Likewise with the administration and with the coaches. I mean, now here's coaches that have maybe had various levels of success where they've been doing it the way they've been doing it.
Right.
Administration that really hasn't functioned with having a strength coach or having that culture or that energy in that area. How have you been able to go about gaining their trust, gaining their support, and all doing that while being a young guy that maybe is just getting his first big opportunity?
Honestly speaking, I think it's going to come down to my communication skills, and communication skills that I didn't necessarily learn while I was an intern, a graduate assistant, or an assistant with the St. Louis Cardinals. When I was at Valley Forge Military Academy, the student body is put into a regimented corps. And as you progress through the years, from your first year as a plebe all the way into your last year, whether you're a senior in high school or you're a sophomore in college, you work your way up the ranks in terms of that regimented military model. And I was fortunate enough to be given the position of regimental commander, which is the highest ranking cadet officer in the Corps, my college sophomore year. So here I was 19 years old, and I was responsible for the productivity of a Corps that was over 450 cadets. Oftentimes, several days a week, I was having to get up and stand in front of all 400 cadets and having to communicate things to them. at a very early age. And with that, aside from dealing with my peers, I had to deal with former military officers, tactical officers, the commandant, the superintendent, the board of trustees. So I had to, for lack of a better term, learn how to politic at a very early age.
Absolutely.
So I think that experience in itself, I was able to carry over to the world of strength and conditioning. And when it comes to communicating my thought process and my beliefs and my vision with respect to Manhattan College, I think communication has been in my biggest favor so far, in terms of communicating with them, in terms of sitting down, getting them to trust me, getting them to buy into what it is that we're trying to do here. Because again, they have nothing to compare it to from previous years.
Right.
They don't have anything to compare it to. So whether they agree with me or they don't agree with me, they're unsure until they actually see something.
Sure.
They're unsure of, do I want my team to dress the same, show up at the weight room at 6 o'clock in the morning? Is that something I really want for my softball players? Well, trust in the process. Trust in the process. There's a reason that we're doing this, and I want you to trust that. I want your girls to trust it, and they've bought in. And it carried over from softball to women's lacrosse to men's basketball to women's basketball. And it's more or less the coaches and the administration are buying in more and more as they see the athletes buying into it.
Sure.
They have the SAC meetings. Each Division I team has a representative, and I think it's once a week or once every couple weeks. They sit down and they meet with some of the top administrators in the athletic program, and just constantly talking about things that are changing down in the weight room, things that are changing within their athletic program, developing a new sense of mental toughness, accountability, things like that, and team chemistry. I mean, the energy in and around this athletic department now compared to what it was 2 months ago may not necessarily have anything to do with me, but the fact that they're starting to feel like, you know what, now we feel like a Division I program. Sure. Because somebody came in here from the programs of which he was at, and he cares about our performance. He cares about moving our culture forward in the right direction, and I think that's carried over. And it's carrying over from the athletes, the student athletes, to the coaches, and I think that's where we're at right now.
Excuse me. One of our coaches that I've had, and honestly I can't remember who it was, but that's what their quote to me was, "If you want me to love you, then love my kids."
Right.
And dealing with your athletes, I mean, if you show them on a daily basis, that's what's great about our job. If you show them on a daily basis love and support and a resource, and they believe in the program, then that's going to trickle on up. And I think another thing that you mentioned, we talked to our staff yesterday. We just had our intern clinic, where the interns, they have to put on a strength and conditioning clinic, and it's 20-minute presentations, and their whole goal is to teach us something that we don't know. But some of them early on, this is the third time that they've presented to the group, but it's like, why am I putting together PowerPoints? Why am I getting up in front of a group to speak? And and the challenge is that you have to be able to communicate effectively in a short amount of time with the short attention spans effectively. And so we've provided that opportunity for our interns 3 times throughout the semester to get up and to interact and have a Q&A and to present on a topic that you had to research, and it becomes something that they've all pointed back to. And so you had it at 19 years old in military school, but if you don't have that, and people that are listening, and you're a young strength coach, you have to find those opportunities. Whether maybe you go back and you speak to your high school, maybe you go back and you speak to a little league team, but you got to find ways to get up in front of people and talk.
And I think that was one of the most beneficial opportunities that I had as a very, very young strength and conditioning intern when I was working under Kyle and Michelle at West Point. Oftentimes, Kyle would send me home and say, tomorrow morning I want you to come in with a 6-week off-season program for baseball. And I want you to come in and I want you to be able to defend every set, every rep, every exercise. And I would have to come in and I would have to do that. And I would have to get up in front of him and maybe sometimes other strength coaches and defend what I wrote.
Right.
And, of course, it often led to them tearing the program apart, but that's how you learn.
That's exactly
and then
right.
There was times where Michelle would have track and field in the weight room at West Point, and I'm sitting back as an intern just watching. I'm listening. How is she communicating? How is she getting the athletes into the racks? What is she saying to get these guys to lock in and to buy in? And oftentimes I'm sitting back shadowing, and then she's like, okay, guys, I want you guys to use the last 5 racks down at the other end of the weight room. John's going to show you guys how to hang snatch today.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, well, we never discussed that before I came into the weight room. Today I'm not quite sure I'm ready for that.
Right.
But her throwing me into the trenches and having to think on the tip of my toes and kind of being on eggshells taught me. It taught me. There's often times where I have athletes coming in and out of this weight room all day long. Oh, John, I had a bullpen today in my shoulder sore. I don't think the athletic trainer doesn't want me doing upper body. Well, we have upper body program today, so what do I have to do? I have to think on the tip of my toes, okay, well, this is the direction we're going to take for the rest of your workout.
Right.
And if Coach Kyle and Michelle never gave me those opportunities, I don't think I would be as effective today as I am because of those experiences. So you're absolutely right.
Well, it's great to hear. I mean, that's constantly what we would do with them as well. So that's good to hear that they're putting other people through the ringers.
Absolutely.
I think with with where you're at, you're looking at 2 months into a job. You're not training all the teams quite yet. You got some future challenges that you're facing. One being how to grow a staff. One, how to really maybe get an increase in budget so you can make some changes to a facility. What are the challenges that you envision coming your way here soon that maybe you didn't anticipate going into this situation?
Some of the challenges, obviously right now we're in a position where scheduling and continuing to develop the culture is the priority. As we get a year from now, or even several months from now, once the schedule is established, once the calendar is established, some of the things that I have to work on is if and when I get a budget, the little bit of a budget that I'm going to have, what am I going to allocate those funds towards? Is it going to be more important to get part-time volunteers? Is it going to be more important to put that funding into post-workout protein shakes for the athletes that are currently training? Do I put it into something like a program like Team Builder, where I can more effectively program for 19 Division I teams, maybe in a little bit more of an efficient manner than Microsoft Excel?
Right.
Do I put that money into new equipment? Do I need to service some of the racks? Things like that. I know, like currently we have Mondo flooring in the varsity weight room, and there's a lot of times where when I get to preseason where I like to superset a core structure lift with a plyometric exercise, and as of right now I can't do that because the floor is very slick, and a lot of the cross trainers, we have an Adidas school, so the Adidas cross trainers that they have is very slippery. So a lot of those things I can't do right now. So it's really going to be sitting down over the course of the next couple of months, if not now, and thinking about, okay, once this ball is rolling, the little bit of a budget I do have, where am I going to allocate this money towards? What is going to be most helpful and beneficial, not only for my staff and for the weight room that I'm operating now, but to help kind of move this program forward in a positive direction. And I can tell you right now, anybody who's in this position, you've been in this position before. A buddy of mine I studied exercise science with, Keith Ferrara, he's the head strength coach over at Adelphi in Long Island. People who've been in this position, Kyle knows, Michelle Carone knows, that it's not easy. It's not easy to be in charge of this many teams, be in charge of a budget. Also being an assistant athletic director, I have to go to development meetings. I have to meet with, different boards, alumni, and things of that nature. I have to meet recruits when they come in. It's going to be a lot to think about moving forward. But to sit here and say that it's easy is naive. Anybody would be naive to say it, because it's hard to have 120% of your energy at 5 o'clock in the morning as it is at 7 o'clock at night on Friday at the end of the week.
Right.
And most of us, it's not a Monday through Friday job. It's Monday through Sunday, whether you like it or not. That's just the nature of our field. So I think, over the course of the next couple of weeks, as we head into Christmas break, I'm going to have to start thinking about what's going to be the most important thing to help continue to move this process forward.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge and this is something that I constantly preach to my assistants and people that have worked with me is, that you have to prepare. I mean, the more you prepare now for the future, the better off you're going to be. And so, I trace it all the way back. I think I even wrote about it in my book where, at Tampa Bay as an intern, I wrote down every tool that was in the toolbox. Just because I knew one day I was going to have a weight room and I was going to need a toolbox, and that way I could just check it, see if I had everything I needed, and I'd be done. And I think finding good examples of programs and learning those things as you go through, because it's not just the technician part. It's how you talk to teams like Michelle was talking, or how you interact with a booster when they come in, or how you interact with the recruit. And what's your recruiting pitch? I mean, the more you've prepped for those types of things, that's one less thing that you have to worry about, stress about when faced with all those additional meetings and things along those lines. So, yeah, go ahead.
And just to touch on that, like you said before, I think one of the fortunate things that I've been blessed with is the opportunity to constantly network and stay in touch with a lot of my mentors that are at different levels right now. Coach Kyle Farrell, Michelle Carone, Michelle Diltz, Terry Jones, Scott Cochran, Rachel Balkovec. A lot of these strength coaches that are working at all different levels of our industry. Just to be able to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, coach, I got this issue with this coach with scheduling. He wants X, Y, and Z. I know you've been in this situation before. What's your advice?" And people like Coach Kyle and Michelle are always willing to share their experiences and share their knowledge. And sometimes that's, as a young strength coach in this position, that's the only way to learn is to learn from people who've been in your shoes before.
Excuse me, that's absolutely how you learn. I mean, I tell our guys, if they can avoid the mistakes that I've made or others have made, then they've increased their learning curve exponentially.
Right.
Excuse me. And so I couldn't agree with you more. I think also planning, like you talked about, with where you're going to allocate resources. I mean, even if you don't have money given to you or resources currently, knowing where that money is going to go gives the confidence to those decision makers that you have a plan and you're not just throwing whimsically something on paper. We break ours down into what's coming out of our annual budget, each year. What's our 1, 3, and 5 year plan with that? What's coming out of our coaches, and so, for example, at a place like Manhattan College or when out, even here, we've done it here. I make all the teams contribute. It doesn't always have to be much, I mean, this year we had them contribute. Every team contributed a TRX and every team contributed a slam ball, and so at the end of the day, we had 19 of those implements coming into our program. It didn't cost them a whole lot, but it was something where they had to make a contribution to make our situation better.
Right.
And then it's having a plan for those unexpected times when money potentially comes your way. A donor walks through, "Hey, I want to give $10,000 to the weight room,"
right.
Or you have a player that goes off to play professional and they want to give back. And then lastly, it's the big ticket items. It's the vision casting and have a plan for that money. Or have a plan for where you want to take the program. So having those areas, what that does when you have that down on paper, you're able to work through those, and sometimes you all of a sudden you get, you're able to knock off something that maybe is on the year 3 or year 5, and you feel real good about it.
Right. The good thing about when I came in here, as I said before, that it was a more or less a student body weight room.
Right.
There was a lot of pieces of equipment in there that you're not going to find a whole lot of abundance of in a Division I sports performance facility. So I had 15 Life Fitness treadmills sitting around collecting dust with cobwebs on it. So I was able to sell those. One of our facilities representatives were able to sell those on Craigslist, and we got some money for that. And I poured that into, I'm very Olympic based in my programming. So I was able to take that funding from selling the treadmills and some of the older Cybex equipments that we weren't going to use.
Right.
And I got, I think it was 8 20 kg Penlay bars, collars that spin, because a lot of the bars that were down there initially, the collars were broken, the bars were bent down the middle. It was just a safety hazard. It was just a safety hazard. So, I had to think on my toes quickly, how can we make the best of the situation? So, we sold a lot of the old equipment so we get, immediate money that wasn't going to come out of the already existing athletic department budget. We got the 8 kg, 20 kg bars, and then I actually contacted my old Olympic weightlifting coach. He's the USAW Level 5 Senior International coach, and he said, "Hey, if you got $100 in your pocket, I'll take you to Home Depot, and we'll get some grade 8 half-inch plywood, and we'll build you some homemade lifting blocks and platforms."
That's awesome.
And we want to do that. So we went to Home Depot. We got 2x4s, plywood, and things, and we built the athletes' lifting blocks. We built them platforms with rubber tiling. So it's coming along. It's coming along.
Well, that's when you learn the most, is when
Right.
when you're forced to think outside the box and to address and come up with solutions with problems. And
Right.
we're constantly preaching to our staff that we're solution finders, not problem creators.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
well, buddy, we end these shows with some quick resources. So give me the best piece of coaching advice you ever received.
The best piece of coaching advice that I ever received, less is more.
Absolutely.
Less is more. And one of the reasons why I place so much value in that is because I've heard it from so many different individuals that aren't interconnected.
Yeah.
So many of my mentors, from Rob Panarillo and Dean Matalone at Professional Athletic Performance Center in Long Island, to some of the athletic trainers, a physical therapist with the St. Louis Cardinals, David Meyer, and some of my mentors at Alabama as well. I'm just I'm a big firm believer in the fact that as long as you cover your bases with respect to programming and with respect to providing the athlete what it is that they need. Okay, we're going to do an Olympic variation, a squat, a push, a pull, and a posterior chain. As long as you place emphasis on those very basic fundamentals in the weight room setting, over time, things will come together in itself.
No question.
So
No question.
less is more. Less is more.
I couldn't agree with you more. What about a favorite or a recommendation for a book, app, and website?
Book, app, and a website. Book, Basketball Anatomy by Brian Cole, and again, one of my former mentors, Robert Panarillo. This was published, I want to say, about a month and a half ago. It's a brand new piece of literature, and basically what it is, it's a textbook that's compiled of Mr. Cole and Mr. Panarillo's experience working in the strength and conditioning and kind of sports medicine field, and it's broken down into different chapters. ACL prevention, plyometrics, upper body push, upper body pull, Olympic variation, squat variation. And it's a depiction of a basketball player performing the exercise and then doing something on the court that shows the carryover and the transfer to what it is that they do. Great illustrations, anatomy charts, and brief clips on why we do this and how to perform it correctly.
That's great. What about an app and a website?
Application right now. I'm working with this Insider application from one of the strength and conditioning coaches at ODU, and basically it's a means for strength and conditioning coaches to kind of get on there and share what it is that they're doing with their athletes. A lot of times you'll find strength and conditioning coaches posting videos on Strength Performance Network. They're posting videos on YouTube or on their own personal social media, Instagram, Facebook. And I think this is a great tool, great new tool that's still in its beta process for strength coaches to kind of share their ideas and their toolbox, their personal toolbox with one another.
Yeah, I'm a part of that as well. I think it's going to be something that's cool coming forward.
Absolutely.
Website, any websites you frequent?
Strength Performance Network. I love getting on there, them and Stack. I like going on Stack, and the reason being is that they show videos and articles that pertain to different sports. Obviously, in our field, not everybody works with the same sports, whether it be Olympic or football side. And the fact that you can just go on there and read up on brand new articles, watch video clips and things of that nature on the individual sports, I think is huge for strength coaches.
Well, I agree. Both great resources. Well, buddy, I appreciate you coming on the show, man, and sharing your experience and your journey. Like I said, I think it's something that, sometimes in the show, we talk to, people that have done it 15, 20 years and things along those lines. But, really the learning takes place in sitting in the situation you're currently in. So I'm excited for you, man. I remember being in that spot and having that kind of energy and working those, freaking 20-hour days and things along those lines,
Say that again, yep.
But I'm excited for you, man. I appreciate you coming on and sharing with everybody.
Thank you very much for having me, sir. I appreciate it.
That's it for this episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk. Thanks to this week's guest as well as our sponsors for bringing this episode to you for free. Make sure to check out ronmckeefery.com where you can join our mailing list, find the show notes, including all the links and resources mentioned, and information about Coach McKeefery's other products. While you are there, please join Coach McKeefery in the comments section thanking our guest for sharing. If you haven't subscribed to Iron Game Chalk Talk on YouTube or iTunes yet, make sure to do so. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome. Coach McKeefery can be found on Twitter at @RMcKeefery, on Facebook and YouTube at /Ron.McKeefery. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk.